Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. Ordinarily, our program is designed to provide a little information about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe is the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. Today, we're going to have a shorter call. We're going to spend our time talking about the situation as it exists in Iraq right now. After last week's call, we started receiving daily contacts in excess of 50 individuals, either by email or phone or text or however they got in touch with us. So we are really, really backed up on providing some service to existing clients and initial trust packages to individuals that are interested in establishing a trust. In addition, we're going to be interviewing this afternoon some paralegals because we're going to need to beef up the staff to deal with the increase in activity, not only because of the anticipation of the reinstitution of the dinar, but certainly all of the service work that we're going to need to do after the revaluation of the dinar globally. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's going on in Iraq right now, and it builds very nicely on the things that we discussed last week. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we deem to be relevant. Of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the dinar. We are still hopeful that we'll see a reinstitution before the end of this month, but given the information I'm about to share with you, even if that does not occur before the end of this month, it's very difficult to see how they can postpone it much longer beyond that, and you'll understand that when I get into the information that I have. And Iraq is moving quickly in the right direction. As a matter of fact, there was a recent statement that was released just days ago by Prime Minister Kazemi. Very important things to say. The thrust of his release was that the nation-state of Iraq is now internally and politically stable, and that the country is ready to become an international player. Now, that's simply not possible without a viable global currency. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's as plain a statement as he can make with regard to where they're going with all of this. Now, the Prime Minister went into the history of Iraq, going back 6,000 years, talking about how a broken nation has been healed, and talking about their illustrious history, going all the way back to the 6,000 years ago to Samaria and Hammurabi and all of that. He said that the nation, after many struggles, has achieved national unity and it finally an adherence to the rule of law. He said that Erbil and Baghdad are now working together in a spirit of cooperation, and that Kurdistan is finally delivering the agreed-upon data with regard to oil and non-oil revenues and bringing them into the fold. He also said that the OFAC sanctions by the United States are being lifted. He said that the visit from Pope Francis is a benchmark, and it signals an international dialogue with the West and economic relations with nations from the West, which, again, can only be accomplished with a global viable currency. He also went on to say that it was time for coalition forces to begin a drawdown in Iraq. Now, that's important as well because Kazemi was very supportive and argued that it was necessary for the coalition forces at the time, and now he's saying that the nation is healed and that there is sufficient unity, and it's time for coalition forces to begin to withdraw. It also suggests that Iran is ready to play nice and is not going to be interfering in the affairs of Iraq. One of the reasons that I believe that's the case is because the IMF is now signaling that they're ready to reinstitute or revalue the Iranian rial. So all of these things are helpful from the standpoint of the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. Now, in addition to this statement, we just had the completion of a week-long summit between the CBI and the IMF. The discussions of this summit had to do with the project to delete the zeros and negotiations and discussions about the reinstitution rate in country and the revaluation of the currency. Now, of course, a few months ago, when Iraq substantially reduced or devalued the dinar against the U.S. dollar, a lot of our clients were very disturbed and said, oh my goodness, this is going in the wrong direction, this is going in the wrong direction. What I tried to argue then, and what I think is in fact happening, is that the artificial devaluation of the dinar against the dollar was done in order to collect as much of the provisional currency that's out there, which is in fact the project to delete the zeros. Once that's been accomplished, then of course they can go to the reinstitution rate in country and the revaluation. It looks as though the IMF is in agreement that something close to a 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar will be the reinstituted rate, and something around $3 per dinar will be the global revalued rate. Now, another issue of concern is that Iraq is paid over 90% of the reparations to Kuwait. Now, this is important because this will take Iraq out of Chapter 7. Iraq needs to come out of Chapter 7 in order to go from Article 14 compliant with the UN to Article 8 compliant with the UN. They need to be Article 8 compliant with the UN in order for the global revaluation. So once again, everything is moving in the right direction. Kazemi also went on to state that he believes that the elections that were to be held in August can be moved up to an earlier date. Again, showing that they believe that they've reached a political stability. The IMF has again stipulated that they're willing to provide short-term loans to Iraq. However, the steep rise in the price of a barrel of crude from roughly $35 to now over $70 actually will put Iraq in surplus this year, so there would probably be no need for a loan. Now, there has been a postponement in the passage of the budget, but that actually, in a backhanded way, works to our advantage. There are three scenarios we're looking at. Scenario number one may not be the one that happens, but it's entirely possible, which is that the dinar is reinstituted and they immediately pass the budget with the reinstituted rate. The most likely scenario, in my opinion, is that they will pass the budget at the reduced rate, make no expenditures at that rate, and immediately reinstitute and then recalibrate the budget. The less likely scenario, but it's possible, is that they pass the budget at the lower dinar rate, they start making payments at that rate, and because it would be extremely difficult to recalibrate the budget with a reinstituted rate after they've already made expenditures at the lower rate, that could theoretically bump this all the way to January of 2022. I do not believe that that's going to happen. I believe that either the budget will be passed and the rate will immediately be adjusted before there are any expenditures, or they will reinstitute in country and simultaneously pass the budget. Another issue that they're dealing with is the renegotiation of some of the suspended laws. One is the federal Supreme Court law, which has to do basically with the independence of the court. The second would be the Article 140 of the Constitution, which is the de-Arabization of Kurdistani region, passage of the oil and gas law, which has to do with the equitable distribution of revenues from the sale of petroleum and, of course, the draft budget itself. The last thing I would mention is they are now, according to the CBI, officially transitioning to the BUNA payment platform. It is a digital payment platform for transactions used primarily by Arab nations, but also used by other non-Arab nations. What this does, whether you're talking about auctions, whether you're talking about imports and exports and trade, or whether you're talking about transactions at the entrance centers, is that the transactions will now be digital. So not using the hard currency, that eliminates the ability of these corrupt officials to skim from these transactions. So all of this information suggests to me that we are absolutely on track for the reinstitution of the dinar in country, and there is a distinct possibility that this can get done before the end of this month. So this is all very, very good news. Now, those of us that have been involved in this for a substantial amount of time know that Iraq has had a long history of last-minute X factors that postpone this thing. However, it's true that we've wanted this to happen for some time, but they have not postponed the reinstitution after they've gotten everything in place. They were close in 2012. They were close in 2014. But what occurred at those times was all of the things that they've accomplished right now, the reforms in the white paper, all of that had not been done in 2012 and 2014. The difference here is that all the heavy lifting is done. So it seems to me, I'm hard-pressed to find a reason why this thing will not finally get pushed through to our benefit. So that's where we stand today. This is all very, very good news. For those of you calling in for the first time, we are not moving to a discussion of the program we've put in place and going to a Q&A, which is what we usually do. However, I would strongly suggest you listen to the call of last week, March 3rd. It has some of the preliminary information with regard to the reinstitution that built on what I've said today. It has all of the information about the program we've put in place to assist you. It has a very informative Q&A, and it has all the information that you would need if you want to contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. So things are looking really good. I'm hopeful that we finally reached a place of no return with regard to this reinstitution, and we can all be dealing with the other subjects of much more important. Paying our taxes, investing this money wisely, moving into some tangible assets to avoid the financial volatility that's going to occur when this reinstitution occurs, providing for our children, our grandchildren, and those of us that are involved heavily in some of the other philanthropic endeavors. So thanks very much again for listening to the call. We'll be back again certainly next Wednesday, and if something of a dramatic nature like the reinstitution were to happen within the next week, we will try to get out an emergency email and an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.